Hi, Aniruddha here. So today we are here for continuing our Angular revision. In the last video, we have covered a lot of things related to the Angular. Well, I'm talking about this part. In this video, I have covered a lot of things, basics related to the Angular. We have covered the data binding. We discussed basic folder structure, what is Angular project, what is CLI, and the other things. Now, in the continuation of the same series, I'm recording this video. So let us start and continue with some things in the Angular that will come after the data binding. Remember that it is a revision series. I'm not going to cover in detail. It is a revision kind of thing. So we would be having all the things or all the concepts we will touch, we will see the things and we'll move ahead. Okay. Now we worked with the data binding. If you see this code, I think I didn't push it to the Git, but I will do that shortly. So if you see, we created centered H1, DT, BTN, and the upper H1. If you want to see what exactly we have done, you have landed directly on this video, I request you to go to the first video of this series. Okay. Now, when you talk about the data binding is that concept from the script part. If you want to set some data to the view, we have seen what do we mean by view. View is that thing which is a content of the component, or which is a data of the component. That is the view. So what Angular does internally, it goes to all of your content like this, all of the template data like this, and it creates one object. That is nothing but what the view is. Now, when you say data binding, from here, if you want to assign the data to this, or if you want to get the data from this and assign it over here, data binding comes into the picture. And that's what we have seen: interpolation binding, property binding, and the event binding. When you say interpolation, it is nothing but what you can say in the double curly braces, we write the thing. Property binding, rectangular brackets. Event binding, round brackets, right? And then we have seen what is at output, what is at input. A custom, you can say, properties and the custom events. If you want to know in detail, you may watch the earlier video. Okay. Here are the examples of the binding: text interpolation, property binding, event binding, two-way binding. So what is a two-way binding? We'll talk about that now. So when you say two-way binding, I will cover that little bit later on, not here. We will cover two-way binding little bit later on, not exactly now. If you can see, let me just introduce you what is a two-way binding. If you see over here, property binding plus event binding. See here, the Angular's two-way binding syntax is a combination of the square brackets and the parentheses. The syntax combines the property binding with the parenthesis of event binding, which is as follows. This thing, whenever you see something like this, you may understand that this is something kind of two-way binding. This is something called as what? Two-way binding. We will talk about that shortly, but not here. Okay, so with this, I'm moving ahead to another concept. Whenever you come to components, view encapsulation we have seen, then how to work with the styles that we have seen, and very, very important thing is the sharing data between the components. Okay, let me open the VS Code over here and let's revise sharing the data between two components. There are two ways. So first, today we will see one of them. So let's create what you can say, a new component, and I can have terminal cd desktop cd ang revision ls-l revision project, and here if you see nggc data com means communication, dtcom we can say, and using input output nggc dtcom input output, hit the enter, and if you see dtcom input output folder has been created. Now what? So inside this I would be having two components. Okay, so here we can say nggc, and you can give a name of this folder dtcom ipop dtcom ipop / name of your component. I can say one comp hyphen flat. Now when you say hyphen flat, so inside this folder new folder will not be created. If you see the behavior, you have done nggc dtcom ipop. Can you see it has created a separate folder? Now I don't want to create a separate folder, but I would be needing a component right into this folder. That's why one flag is there, flat. Just hit the enter and look at the logs. It has given src app dtcom, and if you see, css has been created, html has been created, spec file has been created, and inside there is no separate folder. But in the earlier case, if you see, a separate folder has been created. Here no folder has been created. That is because of the flat. Remember that it is because of whom? This flat. Now what I want to do in this app component, this guy, let me remove all these things and just write this one. So this kind of upper folder, and here I will write it, okay, dtcomp, and inside the html of this let's have div, and inside div we can say app one comp. Let me create one more folder. Here we can say app 2 comp, second component. Hit the enter, app 2 comp, and here I can say 2. Here also I can say 2 1 comp 2 comp, and let us start the project. npm start. We discussed what do you mean by npm start in the last session, so it will take a little time to start the application. And here we can say localhost 4200, localhost 4200. Can you see one comp works? Sorry, one comp works, and two comp also works. One comp works and two comp also works. Now, I wanted to pass data between this component to this component. That is nothing but what? Intercomponent communication. So I have one component, I have this as one component and this as another component. So this component wants to send the data to this component. Remember that both of these components are in one parent component. In our case, who is a parent component? DT comp IPOP. See here, inside the DT comp IPOP, if you see this, inside the HTML of DT comp IPOP, you have written one comp and the two comp. So basic thing I want to do technically, so this is the one comp, here there should be one button and here there should be one counter. One counter. Counter means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I click this button, counter needs to be incremented. Click this button, counter needs to be incremented. How do you do that? How do you do that? That can be done by means of intercomponent communication. So remember that we would be having a custom event over here, and here we would be having a custom property. Property means round bracket, rectangular brackets, and here custom event means round brackets. And this is the parent components, DT comp IPOP. To that there would be one variable. So we would be assigning values to the variable, this variable, and this variable is written inside the property of this thing. Intercomponent communication. Event binding will assign data to the variable of the parent component, and that parent component is that variable is passed as value of this property. Value or this variable would be passed as a property of this component. Intercomponent communication will work in this way. How exactly? Again I'm repeating. So this component would be having a custom event. This component would be having a custom property. It would be having what? Custom property. So whenever you click this button, one event would be getting fired, and it would be getting assigned to one variable inside parent component, and that variable would be assigned to the property of this component. Let us code it now as our discussion. So this would be having a button, so it would be having a custom event, and this would be having a custom property. This is what we are trying to do. And here we can say on progress, and here actual PRG or CNT. Instead of progress we can say on CNT and this thing. Remember that one function in the parent. Who is a parent? DT comp IPOP. Now see, I'll go to the DT comp IPOP, and here I can say on CNT, or on receive, RECEIVE, receive event, and here we would be getting CNT as number. So this function would be getting called whenever this app one component is going to fire the event, right? So this is a custom event, and whenever it will fire the event, we need to call on receive event function over here, and dollar event. Remember that in the last section or last video we have discussed what do you mean by exactly this. So dollar event is the event data. Now inside this we would be having a normal variable. We can say current curcnt is 0, and then here we can say this dot current count is equals to this event cnt. And now if you see here, I can pass curcnt, a variable. So this variable curcnt, I will name it as over here. This variable is called as curcnt. So this thing is a parent component. We can say dt ip op, dt comp ip op. This is a dt comp ip op. This is what we can say a one component. This is two component, right? This is what? Two component. If you see again, one component, two component. One component would be having event, two component would be having custom property. Now what's remaining in the code? The code section related. So we need to code this, we need to write a code for this, we need to write a code for this. How to do that? Go to the one component. One component would be having a custom event, and that custom event we can have on cnt is of type event emitter, and it is going to emit the numbers, a number type of data, is equals to new event emitter, is equals to what? New event emitter. And see at output. So this is required. This is what? Required. Now in a one component, if you go to the HTML of the one component, we need to have, let's have a div over here, and input type is equals to text, input type is equals to button, value you can say we can say change cnt. Okay, change cnt. So what will happen inside this component? There is one variable called as cnt is equals to 0. Cnt is equals to 0, and from here we can say on clk cnt, on clk btn, on clk btn we can say cnt this dot cnt plus plus, and then on cnt dot emit this dot cnt, or this can be a one liner. Just write it over here, plus plus this dot cnt. So on clk btn, not bnt, btn, just copy this, and remember that it's a normal assigning the event binding like this. Okay, but still there is an error. Because of this we didn't code it a property, custom property, that's why it is giving you an error. Now go to the two component over here, or two component HTML over here. So here there would be only counter is going in two component. There would be C and T is of type number, presently 0, and at input C and T, add input C and T number. Now you go here, you can go over here. In here, can you see this? This is your custom property. If you see CNT, and this CNT is a custom property, and to that you have assigned the CUR CNT. So when you talk about CUR CNT is a normal variable, and this function from the parent would be getting called when you call on this C. Okay, nothing is happening. Go to the console. Okay, it's not working. Let us see what's happening over here. CNT number is equals to 0. Okay, 2 comp, yeah. And here you can say CNT, counter is CNT. See now, can you see that is getting incremented like this? See here, counter is 18, 19, 20. Everything is happening. Everything is happening, right? So if you see here, if you see this architecture diagram, this one is the parent component. Inside the parent component, one component and two components are the children. One component is emitting the event. You are capturing that event in the parent component, changing the state of this current CNT, and the current CNT is given as input to the two components. If you go here, main files I will open. So let's close this. This is not required. This also not required. Two component HTML not required. So this is required. I will open in the split mode. This also, let me open it in the split mode. And if you see here, what's happening, you have written app1 component, app2 component inside dtcomp input output. This is a TS file. So whenever this component from the within is going to fire the event, the onReceive event function of the dtcomp IPOP would be getting called. And inside this function, this dot current CNT is equals to new incoming event data is assigned to the current CNT. And if you see this current CNT is assigned to the property of 2com. Is assigned to what? Property of 2com. This is how one component, this component will pass the data to this component by using parent component. So this component can send data to each other by means of the parent component. Well, there is a one more strategy over here. By using services, you can use the services, and by means of services also you can do this thing. How, we'll see later on. I hope the concept is clear to you, how two components are sharing the data. That's what they have written over here, right? That's what they have written over here. Data always pass from the parent to the child, and we have taken benefit of this thing. So whatever they have said, I explain all the things, and same thing we have implemented. The example might be different in their case, but this is how it will work. Okay, let's move to the next part. That is nothing but content projection. If you remember, again I'm saying this video is the second part of the series. If you have landed directly on this video, I request you to go to the first part. A description to the link to the first video is mentioned in the description. Even at the beginning of this video, I have shown you which one is that. Fine. Now what I will do, let me create a simple thing. Centered H1. Let me go to the centered H1. And inside the centered H1, or here, let's not go anywhere else. I'm writing a paragraph over here. Where is this data? See, you have written the paragraph. In the app.dt comp IPOP. App.dt comp IPOP. My question is that where is that paragraph? You will not see that paragraph anywhere over here. Where is that paragraph? Just think 1 minute and let me know. Okay. So what I'm saying, where is this paragraph? Where is this paragraph? We need to find out where is that paragraph actually. And this thing is nothing but what? The content projection. The topic describes how to use the content projection. So this topic describes how to use the content projection. Content projection is a pattern in which you insert or project the content you want to use inside another component. The content projection is a pattern in which you insert or project the content you want to use inside the other component. For example, you have a card component that accepts the content provided by another component. The following section describes the common implementations of the content projection: single slot content projection, multi-slot content projection, and the conditional content projection. But in the beginning, what is content projection, that you need to know. My very easy question to you guys is that where is this paragraph? Why paragraph is not appearing on the screen? Why paragraph is not appearing on the screen? Okay, let us check. Is it there in the source code? Go here in the body, app root, div, this, right? There is a, if you see over here also, that paragraph is not available, which means that Angular does something over here and it doesn't load this paragraph. Remember that app component wants to insert this paragraph into this component. App component wants to inject this into this thing. That is called as content projection. Now, this is a half code I have written. So you can go to So you can go to data comp IPOP, then data comp IPOP HTML, and see there is something called as ng content, and there is something called as ng content. And now see, after adding that ng content, where is this data has been added? A paragraph has been added. Let's go here, let's go here, let's go here, and inside this, can you see this paragraph has been added? Paragraph has been added. Now if you see C19, can you see C18 is used? This C18 is used for all these children. But if you see USHC19, that is used for app component. Can you see here inside the app component USHC19? If you see USHC19 is used to this guy, which means that what I'm trying to put over here, or what I'm trying to say over here, this paragraph is not the property, or this paragraph is not belongs to this app DTCom, but this paragraph is getting injected externally. This paragraph is getting injected to your component externally. That is called as external content projection. That is called as what? Content projection. Inserting external data to the component. That is nothing but what content projection is. Okay. So this is about this content projection. Now, single slot content projection. With this type of content projection, a component accepts the content from the single source. Multi-slot content projection, in this scenario, a component accepts the content from the multiple sources. Conditional content projection, components that use the conditional content projection render the content only when specific condition is met. If you go here, only one. If you see app zippy basic, so this paragraph has been injected. Now see multi-slot content projection over here. So app zippy multi-slot, and here you have written what you can say ng content. Now this thing has been changed, app zippy multi-slot. Inside that there is a paragraph, and can you see it has been named as question. So whenever you say question, so this would be getting loaded. Let's try this. So this P, and here I can say 1 over here, and here you can go, and there is one property, if you see, called as select. Here we can say select, and to the select we need to pass in the bracket, this is a syntax, in the bracket we need to pass 1. In the bracket we need to pass what? 1. And see, this and this will match. Now, where is this data we have written? Multi-slot. Yeah, can you see the multi-slot is getting called and not this one. Multi-slot is getting called and not this one. So if you want to render this guy, you need to simply write ng content without any selection criteria, and see multi-slot and both the things would be getting called. So if you don't write this by default, just ng content. Yeah. Okay. Because there is no selection criteria. If you see, you didn't give any selection criteria over here. So both things would be treated as the same. Now what I want to do, let's not here. So inside this ng content, now see, if I do this thing, multi slot, and if I don't do this thing, so this would be treated as a normal content projection, but I want to load this paragraph only inside this ng content. So here I can say 1, and I will go here, and the selection one I will just comment this out, and see now only multi-slot would be getting printed, and this thing, where is this data, is not getting printed anywhere. Can you see where is this data? Why? Here you have said that, hey Angular, kindly load this paragraph. Hey Angular, kindly load this paragraph. Kindly load this paragraph into the ng content whose select is 1. Whose select is having this 1. Into this you need to load what you can say particular, you need to load particular paragraph. So this won't be getting loaded because there is no default ng content over here. There is no default ng content over here. So we can say dtcomp html, and here, yeah. So this is targeting to this, but where this is going to loaded? In the default. Presently default is commented, that's why it will not load anywhere. I hope you have got the idea, team. I hope you have got the idea. What exactly happening over here? I hope you are understanding. If you are understanding, write it in the comment section that you have understood the concept. And now conditional content, if you can see conditional content projection, to the conditional content projection, everything is same, but you need to know one more concept. You need to know one more concept, that is nothing but the directives, but it is very same. And you can do a lot of things if you want to do with the conditional. We will see that. So once you understand the directive, it would be easy to understand this conditional one. But I hope you have understood what is this 1 and 2. On the same grounds, conditional is also written. Fine. Now, what I need to do is the next concept. If you see dynamic components and Angular elements, we will talk on this part little bit. So before coming to this section, what I wanted to do, I want to start with something called as directives, and again I will come back to this dynamic components and the Angular elements. Before that, we need to start with something called as directives. So when you say directives, what exactly you are talking about? So when you say directives, today you will get to know exact definition of the Angular component. Okay. Now, what we are trying to do over here is understanding the directive. Remember that whenever you talk about the component, at that time I have told you one definition of the component, and that definition of the component is nothing but a TypeScript class which would be having a template and its own script. But today you will get to know what exactly mean by the component. What exactly you mean by the component. Remember that Angular is having a foundational thing with it is called as directive. Whatever you see on the screen is the directive. Now, if you see here, directives are the classes that add the additional behavior to the element in your Angular application. Use Angular built-in directives to manage forms, lists, styles, and other things. Now see, can you see there are the different types of directives in the Angular. So first type of directive is component. Remember that when interviewer will ask you the question, what do you mean by directive? Sorry, what do you mean by component? Your answer should be, it is the directive with the template. Directive with the template. So remaining two directives are not having the template. So attribute directive is not having a separate template. Structural directive will not have its own template. But the components are that directives which are having its own kind of template, which are having own template. That is nothing but what the structural directive, sorry, that is nothing but what the component is. So when you say component, it's a directive with the template. Now we have seen a lot of things related to the component. Now we would be talking about attribute directive. Now attribute directives listen and modify the behavior of the other HTML elements, attributes, properties, and the component. Attribute directives listen and modify the behavior of other HTML elements, attributes, properties, and the component. So there are three most common attribute directives we have: ng class, ng style, ng model. Adds a two-way binding to the HTML form element. Ng class adds or removes the set of classes. Ng styles adds or removes the styles. Now we will see this part. So I would be starting this with creating the directives. Okay, I will use inline or integrated editor over here, and nggc directives. Let it create the separate folder, no problem. Directives. And now here directives has been created. So let me close all unwanted things. This also, and here we can say directives and app directives. Simply add app directives, and if you see app directives work. Okay, now we are just talking about what you can say attribute directives. The directives, well, again I will show you. These many are the types of the directives: component, attribute directives, and the structural directives. The directives which change the appearance or the behavior, directives which change appearance or the behavior of the HTML element, attribute, or another component are called as attribute directives. So most commonly used ng class, ng style, ng model. We can create our own also. So let us see one by one. So in here, I want to apply a border. I want to apply. So here you can go, and here, well, if you want to write a CSS, everything I need to have at the center, we can use this .cont and display flex justify content center. So width we can say 100 VW, height 100 VH, like this, 100 VW, 100 VH. And here we can say div class cont, and class what? Cont. And inside this, let's have a paragraph. Well, this is a paragraph. Can you see it is at the center of the screen? Not exactly at the center, but at the center of the row we have, this is the para. Now I want to give a border. I want to give what? A border. So we can do something like this, style, and I want to assign a JavaScript object to it. So you will do something like this, right? You will do something like this, but which will not work. Which will work, here you need to assign it as something like this. Or if you want to do something like this, see, it is showing you an error. So how to do this thing? Well, we can do in this way also, no problem. So there is a one built-in directive called as ng style. Can you see this? ng style. And there is a property binding, ng style, and I want to give a JavaScript object. So here we can go, see, we are creating a JS object. We can say st1 sty1 is equals to like this, and here I can say border 1px, this would be the string 1px solid red. Now see, this style may come from the server, and then you will apply, that will also happen. Then you can say border background black, and color we can say white, and color what? White. And this sty is a plain JavaScript object. I want to assign it over here sty1, and can you see here sty? Well, this is a para which is having full width, div class cont, okay, and it has done something like this. So sty1, this is the sty1, and to the sty1, can you see foreground is this, border is also applied, over here. Now ng style, just remove this height over here, ng style. Well, this is a para and something like this. If you want to add, now I want to add some padding, you can go over here, see here, and then you can say padding and 2 pixels, or we can say 8 pixels, like this. Well, this is a para and little padding has been added. You have created, what you can say, this thing. Now let's remove this. This is a para 1, this is a para 2. Well, this is the para 1, this is the para 2. So to the para 2 there is no style. We didn't apply any style to the para 2. Well, I will do some class kind of stuff. Another directive I would like to show you, ng class, and here we can give a name of the class. So we need to create the class first, and over here we can say dot box or black box dot black box. Here we can say, or red box, we already have black box, red box, background color red, normal color white, and font style bold. Font style we can just say italic, no problem, italic. And now what I wanted to do, I want to apply this class. So ng class, and here you need to give a JavaScript object over here, and to that JavaScript object we can say red box is true or false. Red box true or false. When you say true, it would be true. If I say false, it would be false. If I say true, it would be applied, class would be applied. True means what? The particular class would be applied. A red box class would be applied, that is true. Red box class would be applied, that is true. If I say false, red box class would be removed, right? So that is nothing but what the ng class is. That is nothing but what ng class is. Ng style we have seen, ng class we have seen, ng style, ng class, mostly used directives we have. Similarly, now we will see what is a two-way binding. See this. Well, actually at the time of model driven forms or the template driven forms, we are going to use it, no problem. But ng model is also one of the built-in attribute directive, right? One of the attribute directive like ng style, ng class. Now if you see, any style is available in this JavaScript object would be getting applied to this ng style. Ng class, any class, you can give a multiple classes also, a comma separated true and false also. Well, now if you want to do it on the button click, how do you do that? You can say input type button, value would be class, and on the click, let's call a function under the directives. Let's call a function. We can say tgl cls, toggle class. Well, there would be one variable cls, we can say false, and here what we can do, this dot cls is equals to not toggle this dot cls, and instead of hard coding true and false here, instead of hard coding true and false over here, just we can make cls, this cls, instead of hard coding true and false over here, and on the click we can call this toggle cls function, toggle CLS function, and then what will happen, if you can see, click, class would be getting added, click, class would be getting removed, class would be getting added, class would be getting removed. Well, you can do this with the multiple styles also. If you have multiple styles, multiple comma separated trues and falses would be there, and it will work in that way also. Now this is about attribute directive. This is about what? Attribute directives. Two attribute directives we have seen. Now we can see this also, no problem. But if you see, if you want to work with the ng model, remember that ng model actually works with the forms. ng model, if you see the documentation, and in that documentation they have said adds the two-way data binding to an HTML form element. So in the forms anyways I'm going to cover this, right? So let's not invest the time over here, but I'm giving you the overview. First you need to import the forms module. You need to import it over here, and then on every input you need to add ng model like this. Sorry, on the every text box you need to write something like this, and then it will work. That is nothing but what? The attribute directive. Now we can create our own attribute directives also. We can create our own attribute directives also, custom attribute directives. We can do that as well. But if you see building attribute directive, yeah, see here, this part I'm talking about, custom attribute directive. So consider that what I want to do, well, let me change this. A display has been added, display flex, and the flex direction we can say column. Yeah, flex direction column. We have added the flex direction as column. One more thing we can do, say margin from all four sides 16 pixels. So from all four sides it will add little margin like this. Well, no problem. So we have first this paragraph which would be getting added, and this is the button, one button we have. Now what I want to do, I want to build my own directive. We can create our own custom directive also. If you see nggd, name of the directive, highlight nggd. So inside the directives folder only I would like to create this. So nggd, instead of C you can use something called as D, nggd, and highlight. And okay, I didn't create it inside, just move it in here also. Let's move it. Remember that in the app module dot this section, if you see highlight directive gets added. If you see whatever components you are creating, all that components are getting added over here, and this also makes a little trouble. It creates your Angular heavy, and that's why your Angular application has to be divided into little modules. That we will see. Now we have created the directive, our own directive. Under the directives we have highlight directive. Now what I want to do, let me tell you, we would be having one one more input box here. After this button, I would be having the input box. Input type. If you don't want, just write it. Something like this. Format the document. So I would be having one more div. I would be having one more div, and inside this div there is an input box. Input type is equals to text. Placeholder, we can say username, like this. And now what I want to do, if I hover the cursor over here, border becomes red. Otherwise it should border becomes, if I hover the cursor, border becomes blue. Otherwise it should be gray. I want to achieve this functionality. The directives which changes the appearance is called as attribute directive. If I hover the cursor, border should change. If I remove the cursor, border should come to the normal, a gray one. How do you do that? For that we have written something called as highlight directive, and here you can say highlight. Now if you go inside this directive, look at the code. So highlight directive would be having something called as element ref. Now if you look at this code, so far you have observed that there was something called as at component over here, but suddenly something new has appeared, at directive. So this app directive would be having a CSS selector. We can make it as highlight, a CSS selector highlight. So what is a CSS selector? The thing you write over here, can you see this? This and this must be same. If you see in the brackets, at the time of what you can say, a multi-slot content projection, if you remember, we have written 1 over here. Similarly, if you want to select this element by means of this name, if you want to select this element by means of this name, whatever you write over here, or any name, then you require what you can say at directive kind of thing. Try to understand. You need a reference of this straight away inside this class. So this will give you a reference. Here you can say element ref, and if you do something like this, console.log el, go here, inspect it, console it, and can you see under the element ref, native element, can you see this native element is this input tag, or if you can do something like this, el.native element, and you will realize that straight away you will get this input box, which is this input box. So this input is nothing but what? This input. Now if you receive this thing, el.native element dot style dot border, see, a native DOM manipulation you are trying to do. 1px solid red, native DOM manipulation, can you see it becomes a red? So if interviewer asks you the question, how do you do a DOM manipulation in the Angular, your first answer should be by means of custom attribute directive. I will create a custom attribute directive, and by means of element ref, I can do that. And by means of element ref, I can do that. But remember that this is okay. Whatever you are trying to do over here is absolutely okay. Whatever you are trying to do over here is absolutely okay. Now what I wanted to do is this thing. A border should be decorated. If I hover the cursor, it should become a blue. If I remove the cursor, it should become the black. So how do you do that? So how do you access the events? If you want to access the events, now see, I can write a function on in. This is a one function I would be getting called on out, and there should be at host listener. So here you can write the event. Just try to understand what you have done over here. Try to understand what you have done over here. What you have done over here. This element is accessible inside this class. This complete element is accessible inside this class by means of the elref. But accessing by means of elref is a bad practice. So instead of that, what you will do? So this style.border, we can assign it to one variable. Here you can say BRD by default is a black equals to 1px solid black, and here I can say at host binding. On the host, see, it's a property binding, it's a event binding. So here you can say style dot, I want to bind with the style dot border property, and here mouse enter and mouse leave, these two events should be there. mouse, mouse enter, mouse leave. So you just need to change this thing. This dot brd is equals to on enter, a value should be blue, and on exit value should be again gray. Can you see? Black, gray, blue, gray, blue, gray, blue, gray. See here, blue, gray, blue, gray. So try to understand what directive does. On any of the element, you have added this directive. So you have added this directive on this input element, which means that under this, inside this directive class, this input element is accessible. Inside this directive class, this input is accessible. So bind the style of this input. Which style? Border style. Bind the border style of this input. Also get bind with mouse enter event and mouse leave event of this input. Now if you have hundreds of the input boxes, you just go on adding highlight everywhere, highlight everywhere. That's what the directive does. Host binding is nothing but what? The property binding. Host binding is something like this you are doing over here, style.border. So instead of you do over here this thing, you are doing this thing inside the directive class by means of the host binding. Host means what? the element on which directive is hosted. So in which element, on this element, input element, the directive is placed. So host becomes this input. So border of the host would be captured by this host binding, and all the events of the mouse enter and mouse leave. So if there is a mouse enter, this function would be getting called. If there is a mouse leave, this function would be getting called. Custom directive, you have built something called as custom attribute directive, handling the user event, passing the values like this that we have seen. Now remember that your directive may have now see default. I want to get this property default from the user. BRD is of type what? String. BRD is of type string. So in the beginning we can assign it as empty, but here we can say at input. So technically what we do, a name of the directive and name of the input property we keep same. So what we do, a name of the directive and name of the input property both has same. So what will happen? So you don't need to write something like this. So if you don't make a name of the directive and name of the input property same, what will happen? You need to do something like this, which will look weird. So property binding, and here I can say 1px, the value we need to pass solid black. Default one is black. See, you need to do something like this. And what will happen here? BRD, undefined, is not accessible to the string. At input, just refresh the page. The type undefined, highlight. Okay, if you see a single quote is missing, just write a single quote, yeah, and see it is working. Can you see by default one is that is working? Default is a black. So from here we have removed the default color and we are passing, or we are sending the default color from here, but see it looks weird. So to this highlight, this is a custom property. Remember that at the time of creating component we have seen your component can have custom property, and today we have seen that your components are nothing but the directives, which means that directives are having custom properties and directives are having custom events. Directives are having custom properties and custom events, so that your components are also having custom properties and the custom events. But the concern over here, it is looking little bit weird. So suggested practice is that just add name of this input property instead of BRD, we can give it as highlight. So it will look like this. And impact is same. There is no question. That's what they are saying over here. Right? We can have another property also. We can have, can you see app highlight color and the default color? They are talking about this. Now what is this non-ng bindable? We will see. Deactivating the Angular processing with ng non-bindable. To prevent the expression evaluation in the browser. See, this is an interview type question. To prevent expression evaluation in the browser, add ng non-bindable to the host element. So ng non-bindable deactivates the interpolation directives and the binding in templates. The moment you attach this thing, just copy this ng non-bindable, and I will copy this thing over here, ng non-bindable. So here if you see, first we will do with the simple thing. Now here if you see, this should not evaluate 1 plus 1 is equals to 2. Now let me remove this part. And can you see here, it gives you the 2. It gives you what? 2. If I add ng non-bindable, it will not do the expression evaluation. See now, to prevent the expression evaluation in the browser, add ng non-bindable to the host element. Ng non-bindable deactivates the interpolation, directives and binding in the templates. Right? Binding in the template. So this will not work. If you have something like this inside this will not work. Applying ng bindable to an element stops the binding for that element's child element. However, ng bindable still lets directive works on the element where you apply the ng bindable. Remember that this is an interview type question. What will happen if you apply ng bindable on the directive? Remember that this will not work, but the highlight will work as it is. This will not work. If you apply the ng bindable to a parent element, Angular disables the interpolation and the binding of any sort, such as the property binding or element binding. Now, if you just copy this and paste it over here, ng bindable, and see, nothing will work. There should not work anything. There should not work over here. Reason behind is that Angular stops working of everything. Fail to execute the set attribute on ng style is not a valid attribute name the minute you add ng non-bindable. So all these things will stop working. Any kind of binding will not work. If you remove this guy, everything will back to the normal. That's all about the directives team. Attribute directive. There is the one more directive, structural directives. When you say structural directives, remember that the directives which change the structure of the page is called as structural directives. Attribute directives, the directives which change appearance of the page, appearance of the particular element, appearance of another component, that we call it as attribute directive. The directive which changes the page structure is called as structural directive. Is called as what? Structural directive. This guide is about the structural directives and provides the conceptual information on how such directives work, how Angular interprets their shorthand syntax, and how to add a template guard properties to catch the template type error. The such structural directives are the directives which change the DOM layout or DOM structure of the page. by adding or removing the DOM elements. Angular provides a set of built-in structural directives such as ngIf, ngForOff, ngSwitch, right? So first we will see what is the structural directive. First we will see what is what structural directive. So I would be having one more div over here, and inside that div I can have a paragraph, and I can say this is simple para. This is what? Simple para. And see, now we would be having a button. We would be having a button. Now let me have a button input type button. Now what I want to do, value, you can say okay, and on the click we can say CLK, on CLK. Same thing, I would be having one property is visible, VS, presently false, is visible false. I just change the state is VS is equals to not is VS. And see, on the click of this button, I want to add or remove this element. So there is something called as star ngIf is equals to is VS. Star ngIf is equals to what? Is VS. So on CLK, I will copy from here and paste it to this click. Now just refresh it, and can you see, look at the DOM layout. Look at the DOM layout. App root over here. So over here it is nothing but this button. Just click over here, and can you see one paragraph would be getting added to the DOM. Click over here, paragraph would be getting removed from the DOM. Paragraph would be getting added to the DOM. Paragraph would be getting removed from the DOM. That is nothing but what the star ngIf is. Star ngIf. Can you see star ngIf? On the basis of this condition, it decides this thing would be getting added or not. If condition suffices, if condition gets satisfied, the paragraph would be getting added. Now see what Angular does internally. So this star, people call it as it's a pointer or what. Remember that there is nothing to do with the pointer over here. So this star means a sugaring syntax. Sugaring syntax means what? If you write this much code, ng template, so how Angular look at this thing, ng template and this paragraph. So if you don't want to write that star over here, right, you need to write this much piece of code, ngIf is equals to is VS. Remember that. So this single line is equals to this 3 lines, one and same. Can you see one and same? One and same. This single line is equals to these 3 lines. This single line is equals to these 3 lines. one and same. That's what the star means. This star means. That star is nothing but what? A sugaring syntax. That star is nothing but what? Sugaring syntax. Means instead you to write this much lines of code, you can write only this much piece of code. Right? So Angular interprets this line as this line. Angular interprets this line as this line. Internally it gets converted. It's a typical property binding. And to the property binding you are assigning the data. Now what I need to do exactly over here is whenever you talk about the directives and whenever there is a situation of changing the DOM layout. So let's have one more directive first. Let's write one more directive. Consider that I have an array. So here I can say mobiles and mobile ABC PQR element XYZ TTT like that. So these are my mobiles. And I want to show unordered list of these mobiles. So let me create a div, and inside that div, see now, we can write a for loop over here. UL unordered list. Inside that there are li star ng for is equals to let mob of mobiles, and here we can say mob, and here we can say what? This mob. Remember that mobiles is an array. So we have, sorry, not this. This mobile is an array. And here you can see the unordered list ABC, PQR, XYZ. How this is happening? This is happening because of this for loop star ng for. This is happening because of the for loop star ng for. Well, there is a switch case also. There is a what? Switch case also. Star ng switch case, right? So we can work with the switch case also. Now, the way we have created our own kind of attribute directive, in the same fashion we can create our own structural directive also. How to do that? Let's do that part. Nggd under the directives folder. I missed this part in the earlier case and earlier directive, and we can say unless directive. Hit the enter, and if you can see under the directives unless has been created, and here we can say unless. Now when you create the custom structural directive, first you do this thing, then selector, and this would be getting created, and there is something called as template ref and the view container ref. So in the constructor private tmrf template ref is of type any, and private vc cnt view container vcrf view container ref, template ref, and the view container ref. Template ref and view container ref. Now see, template ref helps you to get the ng templates, and the view container ref accesses the view container, the place in which whole thing has been added. So when you talk about the view container, see now, so represents the container where one or more views can be attached to a component. That is nothing but what the view container ref. Can contain the host views created instantiating a component with the create component method, and the embedded views created by instantiating the template ref with the create and embedded view method. So when you talk about view container ref, it is the place where complete view is placed. So if you remember, I told you what do you mean by view. A view is that part of the component that you write in the HTML template. So what Angular does, Angular creates one view object, and that is getting placed in one container, right? And that container reference you get over here. Okay. Now if you see, there is a at input set unless there is one condition. If you can see here you are going to create the embedded view, means you have a parent view, and inside that parent view you would be creating a sub view kind of thing. That is the embedded view. If condition is true, then you will create the embedded view from the template ref. In short, let me tell you, just go to your this part. Can you see this ng template? This ng template is nothing but this ng template. Just a minute. Yeah. So this ng template is nothing but this template ref, and where this ng template has been added into this complete view object, and this complete view object can be referred by this VC container ref. Now what you need to do, what they have done over here, property binding only, a custom property you have created. If you see, you have created a custom property over here. Just a minute. You have created what? A custom property over here, and that custom property so here unless we have, and then we can say set unless, and there is a condition C and D is of type boolean, is of type what? Boolean. And to that we will attach at input a custom property, add input. Remember that a property name and the directive name you can keep the same, and simply you can check if condition, unless is we are trying to do exact a reverse operation. We are trying to create exact reverse operation of star ng. If not condition, then this dot vc ref dot create embedded view, you can say this dot tmrf, this dot tmrf. Okay, otherwise we need to clear, else this dot vcrf dot clear. So one place has been allocated inside this complete view. So I told you over here, not here, Angular creates one view object out of all these things, and inside that there would be little containers. So first we create a little container, and inside that container we add the ng template. That's the code we are writing over here. So this vcref is a little part. Can you see here, you create the create embedded view. Create embedded view means you create a place, and inside that place you add this thing. If condition is true, do this thing, otherwise clear that space as well. That's what you are trying to do over here. Now here we can have unless we can say true. See what happens. If it is true, you will not see that. If it is a false, no provider for, okay, no provider for template ref. No provider for template ref. Just a minute. Private this. Just a minute. Are we missing something? Unless, okay, unless, yeah, we are missing star over here. Yeah, see now, if it is a false, it is visible. If I make it true, it would be invisible. It will not show. It will show unless we created our custom directive. We created our custom directive. What is a template ref? What is a view container ref? A particular section inside view where you add your template. This is all about this is all about today's video. In the next part of this session, we will cover few more things related to the Angular. We will revise more things related to the Angular. I hope you have liked this. I hope you have liked this video, and I hope you will enjoy the session. Thank you. We'll meet in the next video of this series. Thank you.